There's no reason why that couldn't be your story.
You don't have an expiration date.
I love that.
The actual pages. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
This is the Authors and Agents podcast. Sarah, I'm super excited to chat with you today and to pick your brain about your writing and publishing journey. But first, let's talk about your latest release. It came out June 10th. It's called Fake as Puck. Could you give me a little bit of like a blurb for that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fake as Puck is a steamy hockey romance. It's the tropes are bad boy, coach's daughter, um, fake relationship. Uh, so it's kind of just like my favorite, my favorite tropes in romance. But yeah, so Fake as Puck is about Xander and Sophie. Sophie is the coach's daughter. She is typical good girl. She's really, really smart, but she's also really sheltered because she's her dad's only child, and she's also the team doctor for the hockey team that he coaches, the Denver Bashers. And she comes up with this idea to get her dad to sort of back off and give her some independence and freedom, and that is to fake date the star player on his team, Xander. And Xander is the typical hockey bad boy. He has never had a monogamous relationship ever before. He's just more kind of, just goes with the flow and hooks up with whatever beautiful woman he feels like hooking up with. But obviously, uh, it doesn't take long for these two to actually catch real feelings for each other and for actual real love to form between them. So yeah, it's just kind of I don't know, I'm kind of in like a hockey romance kick right now, and I love the fake relationship trope. I love good girl, bad boy, that dynamic. And so it's just all of the good stuff that I like.
Oh, I love it. And I think that's what you should write. You should write the stuff that you like because then it's fun for you, but also there's so many other people who enjoy all those same tropes as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love it. That is so exciting. So this is like over 10, like over 10 books that you've published. You're at like hovering maybe 13 or 14 combined with all of your, writing accomplishments. This is such an exciting time. So tell me a little bit about your journey to this point, like through publishing. How did that look for you?
Yeah. So my journey started quite a while ago. I started querying literary agents in 2017 off and on. And I got my agent, my current agent, in the spring of 2018. And then I got my first book deal a few months after that. And so in 2019, I published my very first book. It was a sexy romance called Faker. And ever since then, I've just been trying to crank out as many books as possible, both with traditional publishers and on my own as an indie author. I have a writing partner, Sky. We write together as Sarah Sky. We write sexy romances together. And so, yeah, I've just kind of been doing it all, just because I love writing, I love publishing, I love romance, and I don't really like to be limited on what I can do. So I just try to do everything.
Which, is a feat in and of itself. So, I mean, this is so exciting. I love that you have the opportunity to have traditional publishing behind you, right? But you're also able to kind of take charge and do your own thing with your different indie projects. How did that come about? Like, was there a project that was passed on traditionally that then you were like, no, I'm going to go for this and still publish it indie? Or like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so honestly, what it was is that I was just really impatient at waiting for traditional publishing. Just and everybody's experience is different, obviously. My experience specifically in the romance genre was they don't really tend to publish anything more often than once a year, which is, that's fine for a lot of
Yeah.
authors and writers. For me, I wanted to publish more often than that. And there really wasn't a way for me to do that traditionally. So I was just like, well, screw it. I'm just going to do it myself, in self-publishing. So I, and I really, honestly, I really enjoy it. It's a really cool experience just having control over everything that I do in the publishing and writing process. And I'm not really limited by anything other than myself. And don't get me wrong, traditional publishing is great too.
Yeah.
Like if you're with a good publisher, it's very, very cool to see your book in tons of bookstores and you see it all over the place. But there is something really special about indie in that you can do whatever you want and nothing really limits you. So I guess it's just I credit that to my impatience, which is good and bad, I guess.
Definitely good and bad. I'm an impatient person too, and I love that part of indie that you're able to just be like, okay, well, I'm done with it. I'm ready. It's the book's ready to go. Like, let's do this. I don't need to wait however many 1-2 years, through the whole process to get it out there. That is a good part about it. So looking back,
Yeah, exactly. It's very different from traditional publishing in that you have to do everything yourself, but I think that's a good thing to be able to familiarize yourself with all parts of the publishing process.
yes, definitely. Yeah, you get to have your hand in marketing and all the other different hats that you have to wear, which is a good way to stretch your capabilities.
Right, right.
So looking back on, I'd love to ask you a query question, looking back on your experience and your experiences throughout publishing and kind of what you know now. Like what would maybe your top tip be for authors who are querying and trying to get into that traditional publishing space right now?
Yeah, so in just full disclosure, it's been a long time since I've had to query. So because I got my agent in 2018, but I had been querying all throughout 2017. And so I'm sure it's very different now, but one thing that I did and that I think a lot of people do, that I think is helpful is query. Obviously, make a list of all of the literary agents that you want to query that you like that match up with your the genre that you write and the books that you want to publish. Um, but I wouldn't do like all of them at once. I would query in batches. So I would do like maybe a handful of agents at a time and then see what kind of feedback you get. If you get any feedback, because I know nowadays some people just don't reply to things and that's frustrating. But I find that more helpful because at that point, like if you're getting feedback from multiple people about something, you can then like change your query letter or you can like tweak something in your pitch or in your manuscript. And then that way when you go out to your next batch of queries, you'll have a stronger query letter, hopefully, and a stronger manuscript or sample or whatever you're pitching.
I will say, Sarah, that is interesting advice from someone who's impatient because that's the worst advice to get, like an impatient person.
Yeah, no, it is. And I completely understand. It's super frustrating. Like just publishing in general, how long everything takes and how many steps there are just to get one book out into the world is very, very frustrating. And when you are an impatient person, it really tests your limits of patience. But and I mean like, you can that's the beauty of something like this. You can do whatever you want. You can take any approach that feels right to you. But um what I've noticed is it does if you can just make yourself be a little bit more patient, if that's what you really want to do. Um do things in batches and just see if you're getting like any type of feedback that you can use to then improve your query letter and your submission. Just because it's can be such a challenging thing because you don't really know or at least I didn't know what I was doing when I first embarked on this. So I was clueless. I was very, I did my research, but like I didn't have the experience of doing it. So anything that I could use to help me better myself and my query letter, that I found that helpful. But yeah, like if you want to send out a mass query to everybody, you go right ahead.
No,
That's totally
no.
fine. So you can do whatever you want.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Your advice is sound, Sarah. It is, because you don't want to like send out 100 query letters and then get all the same feedback, or have realized there's some big error or something bad you did, and you're like, oh great, well there's my chances all gone.
Right, exactly. And that's hopefully what querying in batches will prevent, is that it'll catch anything like that. And then each time you go out, you'll have a much stronger chance of, landing your agent.
Yes, definitely. Definitely good advice. I think that's advice that even querying now as opposed to when you queried in 2017, 2018 is still sound and good advice for people to get. That rings true regardless of the time or state we're in.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Sarah, when you're reading for pleasure and just enjoying books, who are some of your favorite authors to read, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, oh gosh, there are so many. I've read romance my whole life, almost ever since I was able to read and discovered the romance genre. So it's so hard to think of oh, who's my all-time favorite, because I feel like there's so many that I love. But I was thinking about this, and I one of my favorites is Samantha Young. She's just such a prolific romance author. And her On Dublin Street series, I'm pretty sure that was something that she started as an indie author, and then she gained, a huge readership on her own, and now she's just hugely successful, and her books are being published in, tons of languages, and I don't know, she's also, a really sweet person, and, you can just tell, she puts so much of herself into her stories. I just love her writing and her books. Um, Another author I really love is Stephanie Archer. She's another indie romance author, and she has the Queen's Cove series, which is, small town romance, and then she just released a hockey romance series last year, and I'm loving that series as well. And um, it's I mean, I read all sorts of authors, both indie and trad pub, but seeing what indie romance, just there's so much out there, and they're not really limited by anything like you are in trad pub. So I just recently, I've or not recently, in the last probably few years, I've just been reading mostly indie romance, just because I prefer it to a lot of trad pub books that I've read. I don't know. There's so many. I love Lauren Blakely too. She has a hockey romance series, Why Choose Hockey Romance, which is never was my thing, and then I started reading her. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I love this." I also really love Sky McDonald. She's actually my writing partner. We write together as Sarah Sky, but she's a romance author on her own too, and I love her. She has a really incredible contemporary romance series set in Nashville. That's so good. But yeah, those are a few. I could go on, and we'd be here forever, and I don't want to make you do that. So I'll stop myself.
We should just do an interview where it's just that. Just tell me about your favorite books that you love, and we can just talk about that. That could be an episode all on its own.
Right? Yeah, I would love that.
Well, thank you for sharing those. That's awesome. For those people who maybe haven't heard of those authors, there's some new great books to devour there. So, looking back on your writing journey, maybe when you were a more underdeveloped author, beginner writer, what is some advice that you would share with aspiring authors or newer writers?
I think a really good piece of advice, which is it when I say it, it's going to sound so obvious and ridiculous, but I think it's true. It's just making the time to write is so important, and you should do that. And I completely understand that like life is busy, you have other things going on. And when I first started taking writing and querying and publishing seriously, like I had a different job. I had a full-time copywriting job that I was focused on. So like I would do my fun writing in the evenings and the weekends or whenever I had like free time. And it totally sucked. Like it totally sucked that like all of my time was being like, spent behind a computer. But it was important to me to, sit down and write this book that I had been in my head and I had been, like thinking about for so long. But like if you're serious about publishing books and writing books, I think the most important thing you need to do is just make the time to write. And even if that means that you have to cut down on, like, I'm not saying you should stop spending time with your family or your partner or stop going to work or anything like that. But like if maybe that means that you don't get to like go out and, have fun as much, that's fine. Maybe that means that you can't, be on social media as much as you used to be, or that you can't like binge whatever show on Netflix you're watching for hours and hours. Like maybe that just means that you have to make the effort to like carve out an hour every day to write. Then that's what I think you should do, because if you don't make that time and if you don't make it a priority, it'll never get done and you'll never actually write that book and publish that book, which would be really sad if that's a goal that you have. And it's just as annoying as it is to cut down on those fun things, it's just about prioritizing and making the time for what is important. And if publishing is important to you, then writing should be important to you, I think.
Definitely. And I think you've got to, I mean, it's a labor of love, but I think too, if you're like you're saying, if you're serious about it and you want to make it happen as a business, right? Because that's what it ends up being when you're publishing books. Like you've got to make those sacrifices and be dedicated about it. So I think that is good advice, even if it could be a little bit uncomfortable to get into that routine at first.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So for you, what is the thing you love most about the actual act of writing? And then what's the most challenging thing about writing?
Honestly, writing just makes me happy, and that's what I love most about it, is that I get to escape to this world that I created with these characters that I created that I love. And because I write romance, happy things happen to them, and there's just something. And I know that that sounds like probably very simplistic, but it's true. Like it doesn't really take that much to make me happy, other than to lose myself in a really engaging and happy story, whether I'm writing it or reading it. And I think that's my favorite part about it, is just the joy I get from, just writing these lovely romance stories that give me all the happy feels. Um, yeah, I guess. Yeah. And did you also ask what I least like about
Yeah,
it,
yeah. Like,
or the most
what's the most
challenging?
challenging thing about it?
Yeah. No, totally. And I honestly, that the most challenging part about it for me is sometimes writer's block is very real for me. I know not every writer encounters it, but for me, there are sometimes where I'm like, I just don't I just don't really feel this right now. And sometimes when I don't feel that drive for the story, I question myself, I question the story, I question the characters. And sometimes that's a good thing, because I realize, okay, this isn't working. I need to figure out a way to fix it, or this story just isn't going to work as a whole. And I don't want to waste my time writing, like 300 pages for a book that like ended up being terrible or that didn't make sense in the first place. So, um that's definitely a challenge that I have encountered periodically doing this long term. And I'm probably going to encounter it forever as long as I keep doing this, because I just don't um creativity is weird. Sometimes it flows and you just cannot, write fast enough, and you just can't keep up with all of these thoughts that are in your head pouring out. And sometimes it just feels like nothing is there and everything you hate that you're typing on your Word document just is terrible and it sucks. But you just kind of have to, I guess, I just think you just kind of have to push through it or take a break. Sometimes that's an indication that, like, okay, I've been sitting at my desk staring at my laptop screen for hours, and maybe I just need to get up and go and breathe some outdoor air for a while. And that usually helps. So it's just, yeah, it's definitely, that's the challenging part about it, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. I've fortunately been able to get past it. It just usually means that I need to like get up and move my body
Yeah.
and like clear my brain.
Yeah, no, I have definitely hit walls like that before, and I feel like a lot of the time that's my brain telling me like, "Okay, you need to go read a book for fun or watch something for fun and like stop." Or
Mhm.
sometimes when I'm too emotional like with everything else that's going on in my life, like it can be hard for me to disconnect from that and sit down and write my character. So that's always like a sign to me to like, okay, just it's okay to take a break and be like, you need a little rest time to recharge your well there before getting back into it.
Right. No, totally.
Yeah. Well, I know you love romance and romance is everything good in the world. But if you were to genre hop, write something completely different, what is the genre you'd like to try writing?
Oh gosh, I think I would love to write something like in the
Mm,
horror genre or like something related, maybe not like strictly, horror, gory stuff, but like something in the more suspenseful or like thriller type of genre. And that's very not what I write. That's like totally not at all what I have written up to this point, but I think it could be really I think it could be really fun just to like make me get out of my comfort zone and see if I could do something totally different and just to see how that would pan out. But I don't know. That's like a later on goal. I don't know if I feel ready to do that right
that
now.
could be a fun side project to work on. Maybe when you are hitting like writer's block, you could try to write your thriller, suspense, horror novel just to like break out of it, right? Like
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good idea. That and I've heard people, other writers and authors give that as a piece of advice. If you're struggling with whatever you're working on, write something completely different from that just to like break up that log jam in
yeah.
your brain or whatever is happening. And it is pretty effective for a lot of people. So yeah, no, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that next time.
It can just be a little side project and in 5 years maybe it'll be all ready and you'll be able to tackle it. But it is fun to like think about the different things you could try to write that are different from what you are used to. Um Even if it's a little bit scary
Mhm.
because it's such a different genre.
Right. No, totally.
Well, Sarah, I just have a few questions left for you. I'd love to know throughout your writing journey, who have been your biggest supporters?
Um, I'm really lucky. My family has always been really supportive of my writing when I first started telling them about it. Like my aunties and my cousins are all so sweet. They read all of my books and then like they recommend them to their friends and they let their friends borrow their they're so sweet. They're so supportive and they're just the best cheerleaders. My mom was honestly probably my biggest cheerleader. She was so proud of me. I remember when I told her that I was like, "Oh, guess what, mom? I'm publishing my first book. It's coming out, you know, later this year." And she was just so excited and she like called all of her relatives to tell them. And it was kind of like it's so sweet, but I was like 33 at the time. Like I was it was just very sweet. Like I was an adult and she was acting like I was like in kindergarten and I had just like done, like I brought home my first finger painting or something, which is very adorable. I don't mean that in like a negative way. I just like it's probably I don't have kids, but it's probably like a very parent thing to do to always just be proud of your kid and to want to talk about the wonderful things that they're doing, which I think is amazing. It's so sweet. And no matter how old your kid gets, they're probably like, you're always going to, boast about them and brag about them
Definitely. Yeah.
to your friends
Yeah.
and your family. Yeah. And that's such a precious thing. I think that's really sweet and pure. And so yeah, I'm just really lucky. I have my husband's super supportive. He doesn't so he's not in the creative field at all. He works in the medical field, so like we're not similar at all in what we do for a living, and that's totally fine. That and it works great for us. But like he's really sweet. Like he'll talk to his coworkers about books that I've and he'll read my books too. I'm like, you don't have to read like because he doesn't read romance. Like that's not his genre of choice. And he's like, no, I want to read this. And I'm like, okay, but like you don't have to. I know you don't like this genre. It's like, no, I want to read it. So like it's I'm really lucky in that I have a lot of very supportive people in my life um who will read my books even if they don't want to because I like as much of an avid reader as I am like there are certain genres that I don't want to read and I don't care who writes them. I will never read that genre. So I feel really lucky that my loved ones are the opposite of that.
Your loved ones are definitely the opposite of that, but that is great that they are so supportive and that you're able to share what you do and have them cheerlead you and try to share your books with others. That's always so great.
Yeah, it's so special. I feel really fortunate just to be surrounded by wonderfully supportive family and my friends are super supportive too. I've made some super incredible author friends ever since I started, writing and publishing, and they're some of the most amazing people ever. Just because they know what it's like to go through the process. They know what it's like to go through writing and publishing and doing everything yourself and the ups and the downs and they're just so supportive and so kind and I just feel very fortunate to have very supportive people in my life.
I love it. That is so wonderful. Well, I have a question about like when you're writing in the thick of drafting or whatnot, like what is your writing fuel? Like what's the snack or drink that like gives you a little pick me up when you really need to keep going?
Okay, so this is so boring, but I really don't like to eat very much when I'm writing. So when I write, I usually do writing sprints. And when I'm actually like writing, I don't like to be eating or like getting stuff all over my hands and getting it all over the keyboard. That just grosses me out and like totally takes me out of my groove.
Love it.
So when I'm in between, yeah, and when I'm in between like writing sprints and if I'm hungry, I'll go get a snack. And I don't really have like a go-to snack, but the one thing that I always have to have when I'm writing is a huge like glass of water by my side. And I don't know why, but I am always like so thirsty and I hate getting up and like having to like go refill my water glass. So like I have this huge like water bottle by me with me at all times and I'm constantly chugging from it while I'm writing. I don't know, maybe it's like weird. I don't like to be I have no idea. I'm probably just really weird, but like I can't have any food, but I need to have water, just like a ton of water at all times.
It must just be that your writing sprints, yeah, just take all of the hydration out of your body. For some reason, your brain is using all the
Yeah.
water and you have to refill.
But that's exactly it must be that. And then when I'm done, I stuff my
Mm.
face with whatever is around. So I get plenty of nutrition. It's just I can't eat a lot when I'm writing and I have no idea why.
Mm, I'm pretty similar. I don't eat while I'm
Yeah.
actually writing. Definitely like breaks in between, but like I can't sit there and eat like and put my fingers
Mhm.
on my keyboard and have them be like greasy or dirty or whatever,
Yeah.
like can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. I feel good that you can relate to that because so many other people are like, oh, I always have to have this or I have to have this. I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How? I don't understand. That would drive me crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't. And I will say that's my husband's fault. I feel like he's like the cleanest man in the whole entire world, and I am not dissing him in any way because he keeps our house so clean, and I don't have to do a lot of it. But I feel like it's like his influence, which I'm not saying is bad because my computer is very clean and there's no crumbs anywhere. So I think it's a good thing. I can take breaks and go eat at the kitchen counter or the table.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, I just have one final question for you. It sounds difficult, but it is not. I'd love to know what your favorite book is right now. This is not favorite book of all time. This is just something you've read recently that you're
Okay.
like, oh my gosh, that was good. I want to tell people about it.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for making it not my favorite book of all time because I wouldn't be able to answer that question. So yeah, so the book that I read recently, most recently, and I ended up just loving is it's a Lauren Blakely book, Puck Yes, and it's a Why Choose hockey romance. It's a pretty popular one. I'm sure a lot of people listening right now have heard of it or have read it. But it came out, I think, a few months ago. I don't remember. It didn't come out that long ago, I feel like. And it's just another Why Choose hockey romance between this team's mascot and two of the hockey players on the team. And it's actually really fun and super steamy and really funny too. And I think I'm just on a kick right now where I need to read something that's funny and super filthy. And this series that she's written like ticks all of my boxes. So right now, Puck Yes is my current favorite read.
Oh, I love it. I will say I've never read a Why Choose romance before, but this
Okay.
I might have to give it a try.
Yeah, I didn't think they were my thing. And for a while I just wasn't interested in reading that, but I gave it a chance just because I heard like, oh, you have to read this, it's so good. And I'm like, okay. And then I picked up whatever the first book in this series is, because there's like 4 or 5 books in this series. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is amazing. So yeah, it's indicative of me like branching out and making myself read something a little bit different, but it's not that different because it's romance. So
It sounds like it's sort of like 2 romance stories in one, but it's like all going to work out together.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain, learn more about you and your publishing journey, and thank you for sharing such great advice that you did. Everyone, please make sure to go pick up Fake as Puck, which is out now, and let's give Sarah some love and support whatever comes next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you for having me. It was really fun chatting with you. I love talking about all things writing and romance. So this is just a really cool experience. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.